There's a moment, just before you step inside, when your brain makes a decision you're not even aware of. It sees concrete, cold, industrial, unyielding, and then, there, catching the last rays of afternoon sun, copper, warm, living, breathing, and something inside you shifts. This is the story of how two materials that should never work together became the most emotionally intelligent design choice you could ever make for a barndominium. You know that feeling when you walk into a space and you can't quite put your finger on why it feels, right? It's not magic. It's material science playing with your ancient brain, the part of you that still remembers when texture meant survival, when metal meant tools, when stone meant shelter. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button because it's a simple way to show your love for these incredible designs. Copper and concrete aren't just building materials. They're a conversation between elements, a push and pull, a dance of opposition that creates something your eyes didn't even know they were starving for. Because here's what nobody tells you about modern design: we're drowning in sameness. Scroll through any home design feed, and it's the same temperature, the same feeling, the same safe choices repeated into oblivion. But copper against concrete? That's not safe. That's not predictable. That's chemistry. Let's talk about concrete first, because you need to understand what it actually is before you can understand why pairing it with copper feels like visual poetry. Concrete is old. Ancient, actually. The Romans were mixing volcanic ash with lime 2,000 years ago, building structures that still stand today, mocking our modern attempts at permanence. It's a material that speaks in decades, in centuries. It doesn't care about trends because it exists outside of time. When you expose concrete in a barndominium, you're not just making an aesthetic choice. You're revealing the bones of the building, the skeleton, the truth of the structure. Raw concrete doesn't lie to you. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. Those imperfections, those air pockets, that slight variation in color, that's authenticity manifested in calcium silicate hydrate crystals. And your brain? Your brain knows that. It recognizes the honesty. Concrete is also thermal mass incarnate. During the day, it soaks up heat like a stone in the sun. At night, it releases it slowly, steadily, creating this invisible climate control that your body feels before your mind registers it. You walk across a polished concrete floor in your barndo, and there's this coolness, this groundedness, this connection to the earth itself, because that's essentially what concrete is: earth, transformed and reformed. But here's where it gets interesting. Concrete alone? It's too much. It's too cold, too industrial, too hard. Your nervous system can only handle so much austerity before it starts craving something else, something softer, something that feels alive. And that's where copper walks into the room and changes everything. Copper is magic disguised as a metal. No, really. It's the only metal on Earth that's naturally antibacterial. Touch a copper surface, and within hours, bacteria that would thrive on stainless steel simply die. Your ancestors knew this before they knew why. We share new content regularly to help you create spaces you love, so don't forget to subscribe. Copper has been used in water vessels for millennia because somehow, impossibly, water stored in copper stayed cleaner. That's not design. That's alchemy. But forget the practical for a moment and just think about what copper does. Fresh copper gleams like a new penny, warm and inviting, reflecting light in this soft, golden way that makes everything around it feel more alive. But copper doesn't stay that way. It can't. It's a living finish, constantly reacting with oxygen, with moisture, with the very air around it. First, it darkens. That bright penny becomes bronze, then brown, then, if you give it time and the right conditions, it transforms into verdigris, that blue-green patina that makes copper roofs look like they belong in a fairy tale. This is a material that ages visibly, that wears its history on its surface, that becomes more beautiful the more time passes. In a world obsessed with pristine newness, copper is the rebel that gets better with scars. And the warmth, God, the warmth. Copper conducts heat better than almost any other non-precious metal. Touch a copper fixture, and it immediately matches your body temperature, reaching back toward you. There's no cold shock, no recoil. It's welcoming. It's alive in a way that concrete can never be. Now imagine these two materials in the same space. If you found this video inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means to me, and it helps keep the design ideas coming your way. Your eyes move from the matte, cool gray of a concrete wall to the warm gleam of copper light fixtures, copper range hood, copper hardware, copper accents. And something happens in your visual cortex that's been understood by artists for centuries, but is now backed by neuroscience. Contrast creates interest. Not just visual interest, emotional interest. Your brain is wired to notice edges, boundaries, transitions. In nature, that's where the action happens. You're building transition into the very fabric of the space. The cool recedes. The warm advances. Concrete walls create this sense of enclosure, of protection, of cave-like security that taps into something primal. But copper elements break that monotony, creating focal points, drawing your eye, making the space feel dynamic rather than static. It's the architectural equivalent of a campfire in a stone shelter. That perfect balance of security and vitality. And here's what makes this pairing specifically brilliant in a barndominium. Barndos are already studies in contrast. They take agricultural simplicity and transform it into livable sophistication. They're rough and refined. They're industrial and residential. They exist in this liminal space between workshop and home, between function and beauty. Copper and concrete don't fight that identity. They amplify it. They make the contrast the whole point. But let's dig deeper into what really makes this pairing emotionally resonant, because this is where material science becomes philosophy. Both concrete and copper are materials that embrace aging. They don't resist time, they collaborate with it. Your concrete floor might develop hairline cracks over the years. Those aren't flaws. They're stress relief patterns, the material's way of adapting to your home's settling and shifting. Each mark tells a story of the house finding its place in the earth. And that copper? Every year, it will look different. The fixtures you install today will darken, deepen, develop character. Some parts will patina faster than others depending on how much you touch them, how much moisture they encounter, how the light hits them. This is the opposite of maintenance culture. This is anti-renovation. You're not fighting against time trying to keep everything looking sure and fresh. You're partnering with time, letting the materials mature, letting them become more themselves with each passing season. There's something deeply satisfying about that, something that rebels against our throwaway culture and planned obsolescence and the exhausting pressure to constantly update and refresh and renovate. You're building a home that gets better as it gets older. How radical is that? How countercultural in a world where everything from phones to fashion is designed to be obsolete before you've finished paying for it. If you love this type of look, hit that subscribe button to help us create more videos. And let us know in the comments what you'd love to see in future videos. Walk through a copper and concrete barndo and pay attention to what happens to your senses, because the visual is only the beginning. There's the sound. Hard surfaces reflect acoustics in interesting ways. Concrete amplifies, gives weight to sound. A room with concrete floors and walls has presence, has resonance. But copper dampens differently than other metals, absorbs vibration, adds warmth to the acoustic signature of a space. Then there's touch, and this is where the pairing becomes intimate. Run your hand along a concrete wall. It's cool, slightly rough, substantial. Now touch a copper door handle that's been in place for a few years. It's smooth, worn where hands grip it most, warm under your fingers. These tactile differences create a sensory landscape, turning your home into something you experience with your whole body, not just your eyes. The temperature play is real too. Concrete's thermal mass means your floors stay relatively consistent, cool in summer, holding warmth in winter. But copper elements respond quickly, conducting temperature changes, giving you immediate feedback. Touch a copper countertop on a cold morning, and it tells you exactly what temperature the room is. There's no pretense, no fake warmth from synthetic materials trying to trick your senses. And then, the light. This is where it all comes together. Natural light hits concrete and gets diffused, scattered, softened. It bounces off at low angles, creating these subtle gradients of gray and shadow. But when that same light catches copper, it transforms. Golden hour becomes golden hour. The copper doesn't just reflect light. It seems to emit it, glowing from within, casting warm tones across the cool concrete, creating this interplay that changes moment by moment as the sun moves across the sky. Here's where we need to talk about the practical magic of this combination, because beauty that doesn't function is just decoration, and these materials are anything but decorative. Concrete is one of the most durable, low-maintenance surfaces you can install. It doesn't need replacement. It doesn't rot, doesn't warp, doesn't degrade under normal use. Seal it properly, and you're done thinking about your floors for decades. Copper is naturally antimicrobial, which means those beautiful copper faucets, those copper drawer pulls, those copper light fixtures, they're actually keeping your space cleaner just by existing. Studies have shown that copper surfaces can reduce bacterial contamination by over 99% within hours. Your design choice is also a health choice, and you didn't even have to try. Both materials are sustainable in ways that matter. Concrete uses local materials, sand, stone, cement, reducing transportation impact. And it lasts, which is the ultimate sustainability. Copper is endlessly recyclable without any loss of quality. That copper pipe from a building demolished in 1950 can be remelted and formed into fixtures for your Barndo today. And in 100 years, it can be something else entirely. But beyond the practical benefits, there's something about choosing materials that don't need to be babied, that don't require constant intervention and maintenance and worry. You're freed up to actually live in your space rather than constantly tending to it. The materials are working for you, aging gracefully, developing character, requiring nothing but appreciation. And now we arrive at the heart of it. The real reason this pairing works on a level that transcends trends and styles and even logic. Copper and concrete together create emotional architecture. They build spaces that feel a certain way, that affect your mood, your energy, your sense of home. The contrast creates alertness. Your brain doesn't glaze over in a copper and concrete space because there's always something pulling your attention. The interplay, the transition, the edge. But it's not chaotic contrast. It's balanced. The cool balances the warm. The hard balances the soft reflectivity of metal. The permanent balances the evolving. It's yin and yang in material form. There's also honesty in this pairing, and honesty is emotionally grounding. These materials don't pretend. They don't hide. Concrete shows you exactly what it is, aggregate and cement, strong and permanent. Copper shows you its age, its use, its history. In a world full of veneers and laminates and materials pretending to be something they're not, there's psychological relief in surfaces that tell the truth. And perhaps most importantly, there's timelessness. Copper and concrete don't belong to a particular decade or style. They're not farmhouse or industrial or modern or rustic. They're all of those things and none of those things. They exist outside of trend cycles.